In a packed courtroom in downtown Los Angeles, a young woman stood before a judge, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her eyes steady but betraying a flicker of nerves. Maria Elena Alvarez, a 24-year-old Latina, was no stranger to scrutiny, but today was different. Today, she faced charges that could unravel her future. Charges of fraud tied to a business deal gone wrong. The accusations painted her as a cunning opportunist. But Maria's story was far more complex than the prosecution's narrative. As she stood at the defendant's table, she carried a secret weapon, a mind sharpened by years of learning, resilience, and an extraordinary gift for languages. When she declared, "I speak 9 languages," the courtroom stirred and the judge let out a dismissive chuckle. Moments later, that chuckle would fade, replaced by stunned silence that would shift the course of the trial. Maria's journey to that courtroom began in a small, sun-baked town in rural Mexico, where she was born to a family of modest means. Her parents, Elena and Miguel, worked tirelessly, her mother as a seamstress, her father as a farmhand. They dreamed of a better life for Maria and her 3 younger siblings, but opportunities were scarce. From an early age, Maria showed an uncanny knack for picking up words and phrases. By age 5, she was mimicking the English phrases she heard on a neighbor's television, piecing together meaning with no formal instruction. Her parents noticed her gift but couldn't afford language classes or books. Instead, Maria learned from whatever she could find. Old radio broadcasts, tourists passing through town, and later, the internet when her family finally got a second-hand computer. By the time she was a teenager, Maria had taught herself Spanish, English, and French, using free online resources and borrowed library books. Her hunger for knowledge didn't stop there. She dove into Portuguese, Italian, and German, drawn to the way languages open doors to new cultures and ideas. At 16, she added Mandarin, fascinated by its tonal complexity, followed by Arabic and Russian, each language a new challenge she tackled with relentless determination. Her family marveled at her ability, but in their small town, her skills seemed more like a parlor trick than a path to success. "What's the use of all those words if you're stuck here?" her father would say, half joking, half worried. Maria, however, saw her languages as a ladder. At 18, she left Mexico for the United States, landing in Los Angeles with a student visa and a dream of building a business. She enrolled in community college, studying business administration while working odd jobs, tutoring, translating documents, and waitressing. Her fluency in multiple languages made her a sought-after translator, and soon she was freelancing for small businesses, helping them communicate with international clients. It was during this time that she met Carlos Rivera, a charismatic entrepreneur who promised to mentor her in the world of startups. Carlos ran a company that connected American businesses with suppliers in Latin America and Asia. He was impressed by Maria's linguistic skills and offered her a role as a liaison, handling negotiations and contracts. The partnership seemed like a golden opportunity. Maria threw herself into work, translating complex agreements and facilitating deals across continents. Her ability to switch seamlessly between languages gave Carlos's company an edge, and soon they were landing bigger clients. But beneath the surface, things weren't as they seemed. Carlos was cutting corners, inflating invoices, and making promises to clients he couldn't keep. Maria, focused on her role and trusting her mentor, didn't see the red flags until it was too late. When a major deal with a Chinese supplier collapsed, leaving a trail of unpaid debts and angry clients, Carlos vanished, leaving Maria to face the fallout. The clients pointed fingers at her, claiming she had knowingly misled them. By the time the authorities got involved, Maria was charged with fraud, accused of being the mastermind behind a scheme she barely understood. Now, standing in the courtroom, Maria faced a judge known for his no-nonsense demeanor. Judge Harold Grayson was a veteran of the bench, respected but intimidating, with a reputation for cutting through excuses. The prosecution laid out their case. Maria had used her language skills to deceive clients, crafting contracts in multiple languages to obscure shady terms. They painted her as a calculating fraudster who preyed on trust. Maria's public defender, a harried attorney named Lorichin, argued that Maria was a scapegoat, manipulated by Carlos, who was still at large. But the evidence was stacked against her. Emails, contracts, and client testimonies all seemed to point to Maria's involvement. As the trial progressed, Maria remained composed, though the weight of the accusations pressed heavily on her. She listened as the prosecution called witnesses, including a former client who claimed Maria had misled him during a negotiation. The client, a businessman from Shanghai, testified through a translator, describing how Maria's fluency in Mandarin had convinced him to sign a contract he later regretted. Laura cross-examined the witness, but the language barrier made it difficult to challenge his account effectively. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, and Judge Grayson's expression remained unreadable. Then came Maria's turn to testify. Laura had coached her to stick to the facts, to avoid emotional outbursts, but Maria knew this was her chance to tell her side of the story. She took the stand, her voice steady but soft, and began to explain her role in the company. She described how she translated documents and facilitated meetings, always believing the deals were legitimate. She admitted she had trusted Carlos too much, but she insisted she had never intentionally misled anyone. The prosecutor, a sharp-tongued attorney named Daniel Holt, seized on her testimony, peppering her with questions designed to trip her up. He pressed her on the contracts, the emails, the conversations with clients. Maria answered each question calmly, her responses clear and precise. Then came the moment that would change everything. Holt tried to undermine her credibility, asked sarcastically, "You expect us to believe you handled all these international deals single-handedly? How many languages do you even speak?" Maria paused, meeting his gaze. "I speak 9 languages," she said simply. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Holt smirked, and Judge Grayson let out a short, skeptical laugh. 9 languages? The judge said, raising an eyebrow. "That's quite a claim, Ms. Alvarez." The room fell silent, waiting for Maria's response. She didn't flinch. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "Spanish, English, French, Portuguese, Italian, German, Mandarin, Arabic, and Russian." The judge's smile faded slightly, but Holt pressed on, sensing an opportunity. "Care to prove it?" he asked, his tone mocking. He gestured to the court interpreter, a seasoned professional who spoke Spanish and English, and suggested she test Maria's claims. Laura objected, arguing it was irrelevant, but Judge Grayson, intrigued, overruled her. "Let's see what Ms. Alvarez can do," he said, leaning forward. The interpreter, a woman named Sofia Reyes, stepped forward. She began with French, asking Maria a simple question about her background. Maria answered fluently, her accent crisp and natural. The interpreter switched to Portuguese, then Italian, each time asking more complex questions. Maria responded without hesitation, her words flowing effortlessly. The courtroom watched in growing astonishment as she navigated German, then Mandarin, answering questions about the case with precision. When Sophia moved to Arabic, Maria's responses were slower but still accurate, her pronunciation careful but confident. Finally, Sophia tested her in Russian, asking her to explain a legal term from a case. Maria not only answered correctly, but clarified the term's nuances in Russian legal contexts. The room was silent. Holt's smirk was gone, replaced by a look of disbelief. Judge Grayson sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable but his eyes fixed on Maria. Sophia, the interpreter, turned to the judge and said, "She's fluent in all of them, Your Honor. I've never seen anything like it." The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder, and Laura seized a moment, arguing that Maria's linguistic skills were evidence of her dedication and intelligence, not deceit. This was a woman who taught herself 9 languages while working multiple jobs and studying. Laura said, "Does that sound like someone orchestrating a fraud?" The demonstration shifted the trial's momentum. Judge Grayson, visibly impressed, began to question the prosecution's narrative. He asked Holt to clarify how Maria, a young woman with no prior criminal record, could have masterminded a complex international scheme. Holt stumbled, falling back on the same evidence that now seemed less conclusive. The judge turned to Maria, asking her directly why she had trusted Carlos. Maria's answer was simple but powerful. "I wanted to believe in the opportunity, Your Honor. I thought my skills could build something good." Over the next few days, the trial took on a new tone. Laura called witnesses who vouched for Maria's character, her college professors, her tutoring clients, even a neighbor from her hometown who testified about her determination. The prosecution's case began to unravel as it became clear that Carlos had orchestrated the fraud, using Maria's translations to cover his tracks. The judge ordered a deeper investigation into Carlos's whereabouts, and the prosecution's confidence waned. On the final day of the trial, Judge Grayson delivered his ruling. He acknowledged the evidence against Maria, but noted that her linguistic abilities and testimony had raised serious doubts about her intent. Ms. Alvarez's command of 9 languages is not just a parlor trick, he said. It speaks to a level of discipline and intellect that does not align with the prosecution's portrayal of a scheming fraudster. He found her not guilty on the fraud charges, though he cautioned her to be more discerning in her business partnerships. The courtroom erupted in applause, and Maria's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Laura. As Maria walked out of the courthouse, she felt a mix of relief and resolve. The trial had tested her, but it had also shown her the power of her own voice, across 9 languages and countless obstacles. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to rebuild, armed with her skills and a renewed sense of purpose. The judge's stunned silence had been a turning point, not just for the trial, but for Maria's belief in herself. She had proven that her words, in any language, could change her fate.